My name is Gail. I still remember that cold morning in Cleveland, the kind of bitter chill that seeps into your bones. It was the day my life took a turn for the better, but also the start of a series of challenges that would test my strength and resilience. I was a single mother of 4, struggling to make ends meet on a nurse aid's salary. My husband had passed away unexpectedly 3 months ago, leaving me with a mountain of debt and the responsibility of raising our children alone. The weight of the world felt like it was on my shoulders, and I often wondered how I was going to make it through another day. That morning, my 10-month-old son, Tommy, had been coughing all night and his fever had spiked. I knew I had to get him medicine, so I bundled up and rushed out to the nearest drugstore. The cold air bit at my face as I walked quickly down the cracked sidewalk, my breath rising in uneven clouds. As I left the store with the medicine in my hand, I was so focused on getting home that I didn't see the car coming. A horn blared, and suddenly, a hand grabbed my arm and yanked me backward. I stumbled and caught my breath as my feet hit the sidewalk again. The car slid past the spot where I had been standing just a moment ago, and the driver shouted something out the window before disappearing down the street. I turned to see who had saved me, and there stood an older woman. She was bundled up in layers of mismatched clothing, her face lined and pale from the cold. But her eyes were steady and clear, and there was a gentle look in them. I didn't even look, I whispered, still shaken. "It's all right," she said softly. "The mornings are slippery. Anyone could have missed it." I managed to steady my breathing and thanked her. She glanced at the bottle of medicine in my hand and seemed to understand my situation. "You're in a hurry. A child sick at home," she said. I hesitated but nodded. She then offered, "If you ever need help with the little ones, I know how to care for children. I could sit with them for a while if you need rest." I was taken aback. I didn't know this woman, and I was wary of accepting help from a stranger. But there was something sincere about her offer, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. I asked her name, and she replied, "I'm Evelyn." I led Evelyn back to my apartment, which was in a low-income neighborhood. The buildings were old and faded, but it was all I could afford. As we walked up the narrow stairwell, I wondered if I was making a reckless decision. But every time doubt crept in, I thought of Evelyn pulling me to safety, and I felt a little more at ease. When we entered the apartment, the warmth hit us, and the sound of little feet came running. My daughters, Lily and Sophie, raced down the hallway, followed by my son, Ben, who was holding Tommy. Their eyes widened at the sight of the unfamiliar woman. "This is a friend," I said, not entirely sure if the word was right. "Her name is Evelyn. She helped me today." Lily stepped forward first, her curls bouncing. "Hi, Grandma," she said brightly. I was about to correct her, but the look on Evelyn's face stopped me. Her eyes softened, and a tear glistened in them. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I haven't been called that in a long time." Ben shifted Tommy in his arms and asked, "Do you know how to hold him?" Evelyn nodded, and Ben moved forward without hesitation. I watched as Evelyn lifted Tommy gently and securely, and the baby settled immediately against her shoulder, letting out a small sigh. It was then that I realized how natural she seemed among us. I showed Evelyn around the apartment, pointing out the pantry, the crib, and the toys. I explained the evening routine, and she listened attentively. I reheated some leftover soup and offered it to her. "It isn't much," I said. "It's warm," she replied. "That's more than I've had lately." As my night shift at the hospital approached, I was filled with anxiety about leaving my children with a stranger. But when I looked into the living room and saw Evelyn sitting cross-legged on the rug, with Tommy in her lap and the other kids leaning against her, my fear started to fade. "I'll take good care of them," Evelyn said quietly, as if sensing my worry. I took a deep breath and nodded. "I believe you." At the hospital, things didn't go well. I was 20 minutes late, and Dr. Harris, a harsh and condescending supervisor, snapped at me. "You're 20 minutes late," he said loudly. "Everyone here has problems." The hospital doesn't stop running because your personal life is messy. I tried to explain about Tommy's fever, but he cut me off. He made my shift a living hell, constantly criticizing me and pointing out imaginary mistakes. I kept my head down, knowing that I couldn't afford to lose this job. During a break, my co-worker, Sarah, came to me. I saw the way Dr. Harris spoke to you. You okay? She asked. I nodded, though my eyes stung. I just need today to end. Sarah then lowered her voice. Earlier, you mentioned a woman helping with the kids. Someone you barely know. You can't trust strangers like that, especially with 4 little ones. What if she's unstable or dangerous? You met her on the street. Doubt filled my mind. What if Sarah was right? I was so worried about my children that I could barely focus on my work. When I finally got home that night, I was terrified. I imagined all the worst-case scenarios as I jogged up the stairs to my apartment. But when I opened the door, I was greeted by a sight that took my breath away. The apartment was spotless. Toys were stacked, blankets were folded, and dishes were washed and drying on the rack. A faint scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. Tommy let out a happy squeal, and Evelyn appeared in the living room doorway with him on her hip. He's doing better, she said softly. Temperature's normal. My knees nearly buckled. I reached for Tommy, pressing my lips to his forehead over and over again. The older children burst out with delighted shouts. Mom, look. Grandma Evelyn made pancakes and we took baths and she read us stories. I was overcome with emotion. Overstep? Evelyn, you saved my morning. My whole world, really. Evelyn's eyes softened. It was nothing, dear. Over the next few days, the apartment felt different. It was lighter, warmer, and more peaceful. The children adored Evelyn, and she seemed to fit right in. One evening, as Evelyn was folding laundry with the kids, I finally gathered the courage to ask her to stay with us full time. Evelyn, I've been thinking. I'd like you to stay with us, not just for a few days, but as part of our home, as our caregiver, I said. Evelyn froze, her eyes widening. Oh, Gail, no. I couldn't impose on you like that. I've already taken too much. But the kids wouldn't let her go. Lily wrapped her arms around Evelyn's waist and said, Please don't go. You're our grandma now. Even Ben, usually reserved, looked up and said, We really want you here. Evelyn's face showed a mix of disbelief and longing. You don't understand. I've never had anyone want me anywhere. I stepped closer. We do. We want you here, and it helps us, too. I can't do this alone. After a moment, she nodded slowly. All right. If you really want me, I'll stay. The children erupted into cheers, and Evelyn laughed, wiping the tears from her eyes. From that day forward, life found a new rhythm. Breakfasts were ready, the kids' clothes were washed and organized, and evenings were calm. But just as things were starting to get better, a new problem arose. One Friday afternoon, I noticed Ben sitting unusually still on the couch, sweating and grimacing. He said he was just tired, but I knew something was wrong. Over the next few days, he had episodes of dizziness, chest discomfort, and shortness of breath. I took him to a pediatric cardiologist, and the diagnosis was a shock. Ben had a congenital heart defect that required surgery, and soon. The cost of the surgery was astronomical, and I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff again. Evelyn could tell how worried I was. Tell me, she said quietly when I got home. I broke down. They need to operate soon, but the cost. Evelyn, I don't know how anyone is supposed to afford something like this. Evelyn cupped my face in her hands. Listen to me. That boy is not going to suffer. We'll find a way. Over the next few days, I worked every shift I could get, trying to earn extra money. I contacted charities, applied for medical grants, but nothing seemed to work. At night, when the children were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, drowning in forms and denial letters. But I also had another mission. I knew that Evelyn deserved to know her past. So, late at night, while searching for medical assistance, I also posted messages in missing persons forums, scrolled through social media groups, and emailed shelters. 3 weeks into the search, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Michael. I volunteer with several missing persons groups. I saw your post and I might have information. Please call me when possible." My heart pounding, I called him immediately. He said that a man named David had posted a missing person request about a year ago. His description of the missing woman matched Evelyn almost exactly. When I got home, I told Evelyn about it. She was shocked and a little afraid. "Why would anyone look for me?" she asked. "Because you matter," I replied. "And someone has been looking for you. A man named David wants to meet you." 2 days later, I found myself in a part of the city I had never been to before. I was nervous as I rang the doorbell of a beautiful stone front colonial. A man in his mid-30s opened the door. "Are you Gail?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, you must be David." I handed him a photo of Evelyn. His breath caught. "That's her." "That's my mother," he said, his voice breaking. He told me the story of how his mother had disappeared. He had gotten engaged, and his mother, Evelyn, didn't like his fiancée, Lisa. She had insisted on a prenup to protect the family assets. Lisa had been furious, and there had been a big fight. The day before Evelyn disappeared, she had said she needed a few days away. After that, there was no sign of her. David was determined to get to the bottom of it. He contacted his friends, a detective named Jake and an assistant district attorney named Rachel. They started investigating, and soon, they discovered that Lisa had hired 2 men to scare Evelyn. Things got out of hand, and Evelyn had been hit on the head and left for dead. The investigation moved quickly. Old reports were reopened, and evidence was found. When Lisa was brought in for questioning, she initially laughed it off, but as the detectives presented the evidence, her composure cracked. She finally confessed, and the 2 men were arrested. In the end, justice was served. Lisa was sentenced to 5 years in state custody, and the 2 men were sentenced to 12 years in prison. Evelyn was finally free from the fear and confusion of her past. David moved Evelyn into his home, but he didn't forget about us. He invited me and the children often, and our families became close. And he also did something amazing. He offered to cover the cost of Ben's surgery. The surgery was a success. Ben woke up in recovery, looking peaceful. For the first time in years, I believed that life might truly get better. Months later, on an early summer evening, David invited me and the children to a park. As we walked along the shoreline, he stopped and turned to me. "Gail, you and your children saved my mother. You brought her home to me. You brought light back into our lives. I want to build a life with you. With all of you, if you'll have me." I felt my heart swell with love and hope. "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes, David." He slipped a ring onto my finger, and the children cheered. We had come a long way from that cold morning in Cleveland. We had survived tragedy, found love and support, and built a new family. Life was finally starting to feel like it was worth living.